So the weights for the two main heavyweight contests on the Matchroom card tonight, Dillian Whyte tipped the scales at 251 pounds, and his opponent, Jermaine Franklin, weighed in at 257 pounds. And for the chief support, Fabio Wardley was 240 pounds bang on, and Nathan Gorman was 271 pounds. And this is obviously converted from stone. And for anyone saying that it's not an accurate conversion because they heard differently from DAZN or whoever, no, they've got it wrong. This is the accurate conversion, and I'll show you right here. There is 14 pounds in 1 stone. 17 stone is 238 pounds. I've been following boxing for so long. I know a lot of the conversions just off the top of my head. So for example, 15 stone is 210 pounds. 17 stone, well, that's 238. That's already there. 18 stone is 252, etc., etc., etc. So you do the maths based upon the stone that these guys came in at, and you'll see that the weights I gave at the start are absolutely accurate. You just add on 14 pounds to 17 stone, which is 238, and you're going to come to 252. And that, then you just add on a few more pounds to get to Jermaine Franklin's weight, etc., etc. So again, Dillian Whyte, 251, Franklin, 257, Wardley, 240 bang on, and Gorman, 271. Now, if we have a look at Dillian Whyte's record here, we can see what he's weighed for other contests. And, well, it's bang on here, right? It even says on BoxRec, 251, which is exactly what I said. And I just say this because there's always some stickler in the comments who'll try and claim that I got the conversion wrong when it's bang on. So, yeah, 251 and 257 there. 257 for Franklin. He was slightly heavier against Fury, but not much. He was lighter for the Povetkin rematch. He was 247 for that. Similar weight for the first Povetkin fight. Much heavier against Mariusz Wach. Heavier against Oscar Rivas. Lighter for the second Chisora fight. Heavier for the Parker fight. Heavier for the Brown fight. Lighter for Helenius, etc., etc. Lighter for the first Chisora fight. So, this is in keeping with Dillian Whyte's normal weight. This is not unusually light for him. It's certainly not unusually heavy. This is the normal Dillian Whyte. We're not going to see anything too different in terms of his mobility or anything like that based upon his weight than what we saw in the Tyson Fury fight. All right? Now, as far as Jermaine Franklin at 257, he weighed 277 for his last bout against Rodney Moore. Prior to that, in 2019, he was 231. So this isn't a good look for Jermaine Franklin. You look at his earlier career, he did turn pro at 262, but he's obviously been a fighter that's been struggling with his weight for many years. In 2017, he was 224. That's 16 stone bang on. So 224 back then. 229, 233. Yeah, Ryder Booker, he was 245. So this is still a pretty heavy weight for Jermaine Franklin. And again, listed at 6'2", I don't believe that height. I reckon he's closer to 6 foot than 6'2". So 257 at that kind of height, I mean, this is like Andy Ruiz territory here. And obviously Andy Ruiz has shown that despite the lack of height and the excess body fat, he's still a very dangerous heavyweight. Can Jermaine Franklin show similar? It will be unusual. Not many heavyweights can come in there looking like an Andy Ruiz and still be as effective as he is. Normally when they come in looking like that, they're a sitting duck and they don't really get anywhere. So we'll see what the case is with Jermaine Franklin. Moving on over to, again, the chief support. Where we at? Fabio Wardley, first of all. He weighed in at 240 bang on, in good shape. Again, similar weight to what he's been in the past. He turned pro in the 220s at 227 back in 2017. And he's gradually gained a bit of weight over the past few years. It's not really that much. It's about, since 2017, he's gained about 10 pounds. So that's not really that much for a 6'5" heavyweight, you know, who's still in his 20s. You know, you can gain 10 pounds. And he isn't some big pumped up muscle guy. He's just filled out as you do naturally, by the looks of him anyway. So yeah, normal weight for Fabio Wardley, in keeping with his recent contest. Against Chris Healy, he was 238, so slightly heavier than he was, let's say, last year when he was 236, 235. But again, when you were a 6'5" heavyweight, 4 or 5 pounds isn't going to make that much difference most of the time, particularly when you're still in your 20s and you're still growing. And obviously with heavyweights, they don't make a point of not eating in the morning before the weigh-in. Heavyweights will just have a normal meal and they'll do whatever. So when a guy is 6'5", his weight can fluctuate quite dramatically throughout the day. He can easily be 4 or 5 pounds heavier at the end of the day than he was at the start of the day. Do you know what I mean? When you're that big. So that's Fabio Wardley anyway. Seems a good weight for him. Now, Nathan Gorman, this is the one guy, along with Jermaine Franklin, of course, the second guy I should say, where his weight might be a bit of a concern. Now, he's always been, let's say, big-boned. Big-boned, you know that old saying? He's always been big-boned, but at 6'4.5", 271 pounds, yeah, he's been this big before, but is it a good idea? I do wonder about the people associated with Tyson Fury, some of the fighters. Obviously, Nathan Gorman is Tyson Fury's cousin. Because there have been people that have gone into that camp with Fury, and they see how good Fury is, the way he's able to move and the stuff he can do in the ring. And it completely contradicts the shape of his body, right? His body looks like a mess, but yet he moves so well and he's so good. And after he split with Ben Davison, the idea was from his new trainer, Sugar Hill Stewart, that he was boiling himself down too much when he was with, Ben Davison and what have you. And that he needed to just come in at whatever weight he comes in at. Don't worry about trying to look aesthetically pleasing. Just fight at whatever weight you feel comfortable, whatever weight you perform best at. This is not a bodybuilding contest. Now, that may have worked for Tyson Fury, but I suspect that a lot of other guys are going to take that as a sign that you can just eat whatever you want, don't have to worry about your weight at all, maybe cut corners. Do you know what I mean? Just because it works for Tyson Fury doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. And an example of that, I would say, would be Joseph Parker. For me, Joseph Parker was far too heavy in that Joe Joyce fight. Way too heavy. I think being in the Tyson Fury camp, he was thinking, well, I'm going to be just like Fury, because he's basically a Fury cheerleader, Joseph Parker. And he was thinking, I'm going to be just like Fury. I'm going to eat what he eats. Like Shannon Briggs when he was trolling Vladimir Klitschko. Whatever you eat, I eat. Wherever you go, I go, champ. And all that stuff. That's how Joseph Parker, to me, seems to be with Tyson Fury. And I think it's worked out terribly for him, at least in the Joe Joyce fight. He shouldn't have been that heavy in the ring. He needed to be light to have the speed to get away from the juggernaut. Not coming all heavy, so you're going to be more of a stationary target. Still had the fast hands, but the feet were nowhere near fast enough. Now, with Nathan Gorman, it may not be so much influence from Tyson Fury, but it's possible. That's why I just floated it out there. Because earlier on in his career, I know he's still a growing lad, but what way is he growing? Is he growing in terms of naturally filling out with more bone density and the muscle growth that you get throughout your 20s? Or is it just loads and loads of body fat piling on? I would suggest it's more so the latter, right? So you look at his weight here. He's a few pounds heavier than he was in his last contest against Thomas Salek, so not much difference. Same against Pavel Sauer, Richard Lartey, and so on. But against Dubois, there's a big difference in his weight. He was 256 against Dubois, and now he's up in the 270s. And the Dubois fight was only 3 years ago. So to me, this might be an indication of what I was just talking about. That maybe his cousin Tyson Fury has said, you're boiling yourself down, you were too weak. Because fighters, after they lose, they will try to make excuses in their head for why they lost. Even if they're invalid excuses, they need something to rebuild their confidence with. And so maybe he told himself, I was drained, I was draining myself down too much. I was trying to be a body beautiful, just like my cousin Tyson told me. Yeah, I'm not so convinced by this. I think that at 256, he didn't look like a drained guy to me. He just looked like a guy who was maybe a little overawed by the occasion, and ultimately somebody who just got beat by the better man in Daniel Dubois, because he was very dismissive of Dubois going into that fight. He was kind of mocking the way Dubois talks because they spent time with each other as amateurs. I think they roomed together and all that kind of thing. So he was kind of mocking him and saying, oh, I got the better of all the sparring and, this, that, and the other. He seemed very dismissive. And so he got in the ring and he had a rude awakening. And anyway, prior to that, in the 250s, the 240s, pretty much his whole career, there were a couple of fights here against Sokolovsky where he weighed 260, but he's been pretty much in the 250s. Now all of a sudden up in the 270s. Is that going to help him? Well, in the long run, I don't think it will help him. But in this fight with Fabio Wardley, he obviously has certain advantages. The first one being that he has much more experience, both as a professional and as an amateur. Fabio Wardley comes from the white collar background. So this guy doesn't have any amateur fights at all. He's got some white collar fights, then he turned over pro. So that should be to Gorman's advantage. He should have, and they've sparred together as well, by the way, in the past. So, Gorman has experience to draw on when it comes to how he approaches the fight, how he reacts to certain things that happen in the fight, and even the, confidence and the mindset going into the fight. He should be able to draw confidence from all that and know what to do in certain situations. But on the other hand, Fabio Wardley clearly has unusually high levels of natural confidence. He wouldn't be where he is. I mean, he's not a world champion. He's not even a British champion yet. But even to get to this stage and beating the people he's beaten so far, you wouldn't get this far with no amateur fights and just a few white collars if you didn't have unusually high levels of confidence. So, again, maybe Wardley is just that kind of guy, like Dillian Whyte. Yeah, Dillian Whyte, similar situation. Unusually high confidence. Very, very determined. And that made up, or it helped to make up, for the lack of amateur pedigree and all that kind of thing. So maybe Fabio Wardley's just that kind of guy, that kind of character, that kind of winner, where he can overcome a more experienced guy than Gorman. We will see, and I look forward to finding out. But I'm sure Nathan Gorman would have looked at Fabio Wardley's fight against Eric Molina. Because although he got Molina out of there, this was back in, it was last year, 2021. Although he got Molina out of there in 5 rounds, he did not look impressive up until the knockout. He was getting outboxed by Molina. He was getting stung in there by Molina. In fact, right before the KO happened, it appeared that Fabio Wardley was hurt by Molina. Now look, Molina can punch. He always could. And he is crafty. We saw that when he fought Chris Arreola. He got stopped in 1 round in that fight, but not before hurting Arreola. And also in the Deontay Wilder bout, he hurt Wilder, and he gave Wilder a lot of trouble with head movement and little slick moves on the inside and counter punching and all that. So Molina's always had ability, and he could always punch, but his heart was the biggest problem with Eric Molina. Some people could say even punch resistance, but Molina very rarely turned up with much appetite for battle. And he's still the same now. He turns up for a paycheck, and he'll have a goal for a little bit, but once he realizes that the other guy is serious, he tends to just look for a comfy spot on the canvas and lie down at the earliest opportunity. And so, yes, Fabio Wardley got him out of there with a good shot. But when I was looking at Eric Molina on the canvas, I've seen him in that position many times before. And my feeling always is he could get up if he wanted to. Do you know what I mean? You know when a guy is out of it, like Robert Helenius against Wilder, he was out of it. You could have counted to whatever and he would never have beaten it, right? But with Molina, nah, man, he couldn't have got up against Wardley as far as I'm concerned. He decided to stay down. So, yeah, I think that Gorman will have looked at that fight, and I suspect he might try and replicate some of the things that Molina did. And Gorman does have some similarities to Molina. He does have some little sneaky moves and little boxing things that he can do, whereby he might be able to frustrate Fabio Wardley and walk him onto shots, counterpunch, all that kind of thing, lay traps for him. Wardley really trades off his athleticism and his punching power more so than his boxing IQ. Because again, from judging by the Eric Molina bout, his boxing IQ is somewhat limited at this stage. And that's to be expected with a guy who had no amateur background. Yeah? You're not going to, because boxing IQ to some degree is innate, right? Some people just pick up things more quickly and easily than other people, like Mayweather. Mayweather just innately had a higher IQ than most other young kids in terms of boxing. I'm not talking about his ability to read, I'm talking about his boxing IQ. So he would have had a higher boxing IQ than most other kids with the same level of experience. You know, some people just have natural aptitudes for certain things. They're more observant and they see things and their subconscious mind connects the dots and understands how to respond in a more intuitive way than other people. But at the same time, in addition, your boxing IQ tends to improve with experience. So you'll have a better idea of what to do when you've had 100 amateur fights as opposed to when you've only had one fight in various situations in the ring. You see, so with experience comes an increased IQ. So yeah, Fabio Wardley is mainly trading on the athleticism. Obviously, he's picking up some ring IQ from the pro fights he's had and also all the sparring that he's done with Dillian Whyte and the other heavyweights in that camp. But will it be enough to overcome what Nathan Gorman has got in store, his boxer tricks and all that kind of thing? We will see. Again, Fabio Wardley, as much potential as you might think he has, he doesn't have the pedigree of a Daniel Dubois. So is he going to do the same kind of thing to Gorman that Dubois did? On paper, you would say no, but it's heavyweight boxing. If he manages to get there with a big enough punch and Nathan Gorman at 271 is too heavy to get out of the way, then hey, maybe that will happen. But I'm expecting a drawn-out contest. If I had to nail my colors to the mast and tell you the kind of thing I'm expecting in my mind, I'm not expecting a 5-round fight. If Wardley gets him out of there in 5 rounds or less, that's an impressive result to me. Very impressive. I'm expecting it to go longer than that. I'm expecting it. I wouldn't even be surprised if it goes the distance. But if it is a stoppage, I would imagine it's going to be late in the championship rounds maybe, or let's say between rounds 9 and 12. If there's going to be a stoppage, I reckon it'll be around there rather than being earlier on in the bout. So that's my take on it. Give me your take in the comment section below. Let me know how you feel about the weights of all these fighters. Is it what you expected? Do you think everybody's coming at their ideal weight? If not, then tell me what you think their ideal weight for these particular bouts should be. Let me know, people. If you're tired of the biased narratives and mass censorship on mainstream platforms, and you want to be part of a community of critical thinkers who love free speech just as much as you do, then come and join me on Patreon and access my weekly no-holds-barred, censorship-free podcast where we lift the lid on a wide variety of controversial topics. It's not mainstream friendly, it's not politically correct, but that's the whole point. We dare to stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Hatman Hot Topics. You'll gain access to a minimum of 2 hours of exclusive content every single week, including podcasts, videos, interviews, live stream Q&As, as well as my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Not to mention a vast back catalog of hundreds of hours of previous episodes. You can listen via the Patreon app with the option to download in high quality MP3. We've also got an Element group where you can come and chat and hang out with myself and other members. Unlike Discord, it has full end-to-end encryption, is decentralized, and is 100% censorship free. You can also send voice notes as well as much larger audio and video files than you can on Discord. So come and sign up on Patreon. There's no contract, there's no commitment. You can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a cup of coffee. So I'll see you over there. I'm out.